Hi, welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. It is Thursday, October 30th, and I'm Jessica Steinberg. I'm speaking today with political correspondent Sam Sokol and legal reporter Jeremy Sharon. Hi to you both. Good morning.
Morning, Jessica.
Morning.
Hi there. It is day 755 of the war. Amid the ongoing questions regarding the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, Jerusalem is bracing itself for a reportedly million-man protest this afternoon of the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox community, regarding the crackdown on ultra-Orthodox draft dodgers. We'll discuss really all sides of it. We have Sam and Jeremy working closely together on various aspects of this story, as well as the High Court's criticism of the government in the matter. We'll also talk about the latest with the State Taiman crisis or issue, and the latest on Likud lawmaker Yuli Edelstein. Stay with us. Sam, let's start with this protest that is planned for this afternoon in Jerusalem. Hundreds of thousands, they're calling it the million-man protest, but certainly hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox men are expected to rally at the entrance to Jerusalem against military conscription that will very much severely disrupt traffic and cause major road blockages throughout the capital. We were just talking about the fact that schools have gone online for the day, things are canceled or severely disrupted. Beyond the obvious issues regarding traffic issues, let's talk about the fact that this demonstration is happening now at this particular time.
Well, the demonstration was originally scheduled to coincide with the presentation of Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee Chairman Boaz Bismuth's revised ultra-Orthodox conscription bill, derisively known by critics as the evasion bill. That's actually been pushed off to next Monday. But this protest has been a long time coming. We've seen many smaller protests, road blockages, prayer rallies around the country. But even though there's a certain baseline demand from all of the ultra-Orthodox factions that yeshiva students be exempted, there's a variety of views regarding different compromises and how to handle the issue. So the fact that all of the various ultra-Orthodox sects and factions and political parties have come together for this rally, I think is significant. One thing to note is that each group has its own designated area, so they're not actually mixing as a way of sort of making sure that they're able to still maintain their own independent identity and independent messaging. But they're trying to send a message that they're united and that there's no way that they can be conscripted into the military, which is obviously a demand of the rest of Israeli society and has been something that the army has been calling for repeatedly.
I know that there's also counter-protests planned of reservists, of Miluimnikim. I know that the local Jerusalem protest organization that usually rallies for the hostages is also planning something at 5 o'clock. Don't really know how it will all come together in the capital, but certainly we're all bracing for it. Jeremy, I want to turn to you because even though this march has been planned for, what, Sam, a week more?
Yeah.
Yeah. The judges of the High Court, of Israel's Supreme Court, criticized the government in a hearing yesterday, Wednesday, over its failure, over the government's failure to take effective enforcement measures against ultra-Orthodox draft evaders. And that, of course, comes up against the tensions between the government and the High Court. So if you could sort of take us through what we're seeing on that front today, or yesterday, really, leading into what we're expecting today.
Sure. It's interesting because the legal process is coming to a head at the same time as the political process is also building momentum, by which I mean to say that back in 2024, the court ruled that the government had to begin drafting these ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students. And the hearing yesterday was about the fact that very few have actually enlisted. So just quickly to give you the numbers, some 40,000 Haredi men, yeshiva students, their date to present themselves at IDF offices has come, and only less than 10% actually showed up in the first place. only 931 actually enlisted, which is about 2.3% enlistment rate. And of those, only 153 actually joined combat units. And to put that into perspective, the IDF needs 12,000 combatants. So 153 isn't really going to cut it. And basically, the judges on the High Court were really critical, and they said, the need for more soldiers is acute. They said that, Solberg, Noam Solberg, who's the deputy president and one of the most conservative voices on the court, he's been incredibly outspoken from the bench on this, and he said it's clear that we need greater enforcement measures. He said we need 12,000 new combatants today. Even yesterday we needed them. So it looks like the court is definitely running out of patience. And I think one interesting thing, just for court observers, is that there was a five-member panel on the court yesterday, and three of those judges are national religious or religious from the religious Zionist community. And the religious Zionist community has one of the highest rates of enlistment, and has also, because especially to combat units, and because of that, during the war, they've also had a very high rate of the members of their community, of their young men dying. And so, you can see this in the way that Solberg speaks during these hearings, in the way that all of these three religious Zionist judges, David Mintz and Yael Wilner, speak about this issue. In fact, David Mintz and Noam Solberg are live in West Bank settlements, where all these three judges are living in a society where performing military service is a real value. It's seen as a national value, a religious commandment even, to defend the Jewish people. And I think, in this respect, the government has come up against a panel which is not particularly favorable for it. And basically what I'm saying is I think all this leads to the conclusion that the court may well issue orders against the government, telling it to increase its enforcement measures, because what's happened so far is as one of the judges, or I think maybe one of the lawyers for the petition said yesterday, it's coming close to contempt of court when you've got 153 combatants out of 40,000 people who've been ordered to draft.
Okay, 40,000. I wanted to make sure of that number. Sam, I want to turn back to you. So referencing everything that Jeremy just said, what are we hearing now? Obviously, there's also the ongoing tensions, which is putting it mildly, between the High Court and the coalition. So what is the government saying right now, both coalition and opposition, about this particular matter, about where we are right now, the tensions that are coming to a head?
Well, I think before we even get to that, I think it's important to note that the head of the IDF's manpower division has repeatedly told lawmakers not only do they need these additional soldiers, but that the enforcement methods being used, the arrests, have been very much ineffective. Part of the reason is because they are not legally allowed to hold them for extended periods. And also because there are massive loopholes in the way the rules are currently written. The IDF, along with the Attorney General's office and the Finance Ministry, have all said that the current method of enforcement will not work to enlist anybody unless additional sanctions, which are within the power of the government to implement without the need for additional legislation, are implemented as soon as possible. Now, within the government itself, you really have a bit of a split here, because according to a leaked copy of some of the principles of Bismuth's new bill, Bismuth's new bill is going to significantly reduce some of the sanctions and penalties that the previous chairman of the committee, Yuli Edelstein, had included in his draft. And many people see Bismuth's bill as something that would essentially legalize continued evasion. Some members of Likud have explicitly stated that they want to draft Haredim who are not in yeshiva, but everyone who is in yeshiva will be allowed to continue learning. Now, keep in mind, this has always been the basis for the Haredi exemption, has been that they're registered in yeshiva. So saying that if you're registered in yeshiva, you can continue to learn is basically saying all the Haredim can stay out of the army. On the other hand, there are some members of Likud, like Dan Iluz and Yuli Edelstein and Moshe Saada, who have come out very harshly against that. Of course, you then have to contrast that with people like Avichai Ba'alon and Shlomo Karli, who have explicitly stated that they support today's demonstration. So the coalition and Netanyahu's Likud party is split. I spoke to one lawmaker from Itamar Ben-Gvir's Otzma Yehudit who has said his party has not made up its mind on the new bill yet, which again will be presented on Monday. And obviously the opposition from the left-wing Democrats party to the right-wing Yisrael Beitenu party is absolutely united in its opposition to this bill, which they deride as a chok hishtantut, as an evasion law.
Right. That was a big portion of last night's Eretz Nehederet, the comedy satire show that screens every Wednesday night. And they spent a lot of time on that, really skewering every single one of the coalition members, or many of the ones that are very recognizable. Okay, let's take a moment to break. We still need to talk about Likud MK Yuli Edelstein and the issue of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, which is also involved in this. And of course, there's the State Taiman detention facility video fiasco that was playing out all day yesterday. So stay with us. So looking into the Yuli Edelstein issue, we had Coalition Whip Ophir Katz also yesterday, this very major news day, especially for both of you, informing his fellow Likud MK Yuli Edelstein that he's being removed from his position on the Knesset, the very powerful Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, effective immediately. Edelstein, of course, was removed as the chair of that committee in July and replaced. But tell us, Sam, what this is really about. And really, obviously, it reflects on everything that we've been talking about.
Well, the stated reason for Edelstein being taken off the committee is the fact that he was the lone Likud lawmaker to break a party boycott of a vote on annexing the West Bank, and he voted in favor. Most of Likud was in favor, but because of diplomatic considerations, Prime Minister Netanyahu had his party boycott the vote so they wouldn't have to vote against it. And Edelstein broke faction discipline to go and vote in favor. However, it's widely believed that Edelstein is actually being ousted from the committee so as not to hold up the advancement of Bismuth's proposal, which he has said that he wants to have voted on in his final readings in the Knesset plenum in December. And actually, Edelstein, in a statement, sort of facetiously said that he understands why he was fired because, quote, "I don't have the skills to put together an evasion bundle instead of a draft law," unquote. So he's been rather harif about this issue. He's being replaced with Likud stalwart Tali Gottlieb, who is very well known to people in political circles for her loud and angry outbursts. Over the past 2 years that I've been in the Knesset, I'm not sure that I've ever been in the same room as her, even once, without her yelling or screaming at somebody. So this is going to be very, very interesting. After Gottlieb's appointment was announced, former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett went so far as to basically say this endangers national security. So needless to say, it is a controversial move, and Gottlieb who has been calling for Edelstein's ouster for months, is very likely to support Bismuth's proposal.
Right. We'll see how that plays out. So, Jeremy, let's talk about State Taiman, the detention facility. Basically, we had Gali Baharav Miara, the Attorney General. She decided also yesterday, this is all happening yesterday, to launch a criminal probe into leaked footage from the facility that purports to show soldiers severely abusing a Gazan inmate last year. Jeremy, the leak, of course, the video, we've known about the video for a while. The question is, why yesterday? What was happening yesterday that this was being essentially reopened again?
So we had the leak of this video back in July 2024, and that video purportedly showed prison guards at the State Taiman detention facility abusing a Palestinian detainee. Now, back in January this year, 5 IDF reservist soldiers were indicted over the severe abuse of this security detainee, which left him with severe injuries, including broken ribs and an internal tear in his rectum. Not to be too graphic, but the allegations in the indictment are very severe against these soldiers. Now, what happened at the time was that this several soldiers, I think about 10 or 11 soldiers at State Teman in July 2024 were arrested by military police. And this caused an outrage around the country, I should say, particularly amongst the right wing, who denounced the fact that IDF soldiers were being arrested during the war and so on. And then after that, you had the leak of this video. Now, what happened yesterday was the Attorney General said that new information had recently been received regarding the leak of this video, which is, there are several, possible offences regarding the leak of such sensitive information from a military facility. So the Attorney General said that new information had been received and therefore criminal investigation had been opened in consultation with the police and the State Attorney's Office. Now, why it's important is because the right wing, especially lots of right wing ministers, kind of seized upon this and seemed to assert that this was some kind of vindication of the soldiers themselves, and they accused the potential leakers, which include the military advocate general Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi. They accused her of being involved in the leak, and it does in fact appear that the investigation is looking into the head of the Military Advocate General's office, Tomer Yerushalmi, as well as other senior officials in that office. And the right-wing ministers accused these officials of creating a blood libel against the Jewish people, because obviously the allegations of abuse have made news around the world. And there was a lot of kind of a sense that by these right-wing politicians that they'd been vindicated. We're also talking about politicians who essentially broke into the State Teman base when after these soldiers were arrested in an effort to try and disrupt those arrests or intervene in some way. So this issue has really touched on a very sensitive nerve in Israel, especially for the right wing, and that's why you had so many of these politicians kind of seeming to say that they were vindicated yesterday. One thing I would mention is that I think that I can't say this for sure, but it appears to me that the video was leaked in the first place because of the massive criticism from the government and from the political right against the arrests in the first place. Meaning, these abuse allegations are very serious, and here we had an incident where some very severe abuse had happened, in which the victim ended up in hospital. But this is not a single incident. I myself have reviewed affidavits from Palestinian detainees alleging severe abuse, psychological abuse, deprivation of food, and really, really problematic allegations. And there's been several reports by various NGOs of abuse, not only in State Teman, but in lots of other Israeli detention facilities of Palestinian prisoners. And abuse of prisoners during a war is a war crime. And the point is that if Israel wants to be a country of the rule of law, it would seem proper to investigate these allegations, especially when they're so widespread and there's so much documentation of it. It appears that the effort to delegitimize these legal processes against the suspects is perhaps what prompted the leak of the video in the first place. Now, that doesn't mean to justify in any way leaking classified sensitive information, and especially if that is senior high-level officials in Israeli agencies and the IDF, that is highly problematic. But I think we have to also understand the background, the context to what's going on here.
I think it's important to note that some of the politicians who welcomed this investigation, were also ones who were involved in the violent riot that followed the arrest of the suspects in the abuse case connected to the video. One of the people who welcomed this investigation was religious Zionism MK Sam Sokol, who was filmed breaking into the State Teman IDF base. And at the same time as we're seeing these condemnations of the IDF, we're not seeing from the coalition at the same time any condemnation of the criminal activity on behalf of its own members. I actually asked over the summer, MK Sokol, if he had any regret for violating the law and breaking into a military facility. And his response was to take out his legislative ID card showing that he's an MK and saying, this gives me permission to go anywhere I want in pursuit of my job, I had every right to do what I did.
We were obviously need to see where this all goes today. It's a very intensive news day yesterday, and surely will be as well today. So thanks to both of you for taking us through it. Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Jeremy.
Good to be with you, Jessica.
Pleasure.
As we finish out today's podcast, I just want to mention something that we're offering at Times Visual, a series of wonderful Israeli documentary films that you can watch from home with English subtitles. After watching each film, you can ask questions directly to the filmmakers in exclusive Q&A webinars that we host. It's called DocuNation, and it's available to members of our reader support group, the Times of Israel community. For more info, just go to timesofisrael.com/films. That's timesofisrael.com/films. And let's just say thanks to all of you for listening to the Times of Israel's Daily Briefing. We'll be back again tomorrow with another installment. This episode is produced by the Podwaves. Thanks for being with us. Take care. See you soon.